Have you ever wondered how something as soft and silent as the human brain could create everything you know? Every sound, every image, every word, every dream? Inside your skull lies a landscape of quiet storms. A forest of cells glows with electrical fire, each spark a fragment of thought. In that darkness, ideas are born, memories unfold. And somehow, a small piece of the universe becomes aware of itself. The brain is the biological heart of psychology, the place where emotion, reason, and imagination converge into the experience we call mind. Psychologists study it not because it is mysterious, but because it is us. Every smile, every fear, every plan for the future begins in that soft network of living tissue. If you could shrink down small enough to travel through your own brain, you would see billions of tiny cells called neurons, each one reaching out with delicate branches, each one whispering messages to its neighbors in electrical pulses. It would look almost like a galaxy, clusters of stars connected by filaments of light, a universe contained within a handful of matter. Every movement you make, every word you speak, every emotion that warms or troubles you is the result of these cells communicating. A biological conversation so fast and so complex that it seems almost magical. But it isn't magic. It's physics, chemistry, and evolution working together. Atoms arranged in just the right way to think. When we talk about behavior, we often imagine choice, the will to act, the mind deciding what to do. But every decision, every impulse has a biological foundation. Your thoughts do not float somewhere above your body like clouds. They are your body. Patterns of energy moving through cells, shaped by experience, sculpted by life. And yet, the relationship between body and mind is not one of command and obedience. It's a conversation. Gentle, constant, and infinitely complex. When your heart beats faster, your brain interprets it as excitement or fear. When you think a peaceful thought, your blood pressure falls. Neither leads nor follows. They move together. Mind and body are two sides of the same living coin. To understand this unity, psychologists and neuroscientists study the nervous system, the great communication network of the body. It stretches from the crown of your head to the tips of your toes, sending signals through millions of tiny fibers that shimmer with electricity. At the center of it all lies the central nervous system, the brain and spinal cord. The brain interprets and plans. The spinal cord carries messages to and from the body. When you touch something hot, the signal races through your nerves, reaches the spinal cord, and before you even realize it, your hand has pulled away. That is the beauty of reflex. A decision made before thought. An ancient safeguard woven into your biology. Beyond the spine, the peripheral nervous system branches outward, connecting your central command to every organ, muscle, and sense. It's divided into two parts. The somatic system, which controls voluntary movement, and the autonomic system, which governs what you do not have to think about. Your heartbeat, digestion, breathing, and countless invisible adjustments that keep you alive. The autonomic system itself is a study in balance. Its sympathetic branch is the alarm, the one that quickens your pulse, widens your eyes, and floods you with energy when danger appears. Its parasympathetic branch is the lullaby, the one that slows your heartbeat, calms your breath, and restores you to peace. Together, they maintain equilibrium, the living rhythm between tension and release, between doing and resting. Even in this simple dance, the genius of evolution is visible. Your brain has not built a separate system for every challenge. It has built a dialogue between opposites, a rise and a fall, an inhale and an exhale. The same principle that guides the ocean and the seasons guides the human body. But none of it would work without the smallest actors in the story, the neurons themselves. Each neuron is a living thread of electricity and chemistry. At one end are dendrites, tiny branches that receive information. At the center is the cell body, where those signals are processed. And stretching out from it is a single long fiber, the axon, a pathway along which the neuron sends its message onward. At the end of the axon is a narrow gap, the synapse. The electrical signal can't cross it directly, so the neuron releases a drop of chemical messenger called a neurotransmitter. That molecule drifts across the gap and lands on the next cell, passing the message along. It's a microscopic relay, billions of times a second, everywhere in your brain. Through this process, thoughts form, muscles move, and memories awaken. The neuron's pulse, called an action potential, is the smallest unit of mind. It lasts less than 1,000th of a second, but it is the foundation of everything you feel or know. Different neurotransmitters carry different tones of experience. Dopamine, for instance, brings the feeling of motivation and reward, the spark that makes you reach for what you desire. Serotonin regulates mood and sleep, gently smoothing the waves of emotion. Acetylcholine helps muscles move and memories take shape, linking body and mind in motion and recall. Glutamate excites, the brain's accelerator. GABA calms, the brake that keeps balance and order. Every thought, every feeling, is a chord played from this chemical harmony. If we could watch this in real time, we'd see a living symphony. Signals racing along axons like music through strings, flashes of light marking every exchange. The brain is not a static machine, but a song, one that rewrites itself with every note. And as that song unfolds, it organizes itself into regions, each with its own rhythm, its own purpose. At the base, close to the neck, lies the brain stem, the oldest part, the one that life built first. It keeps your heart beating, your lungs breathing, your pupils adjusting to light. You could say it is the part of you that never sleeps. Above it lies the limbic system, the emotional center. Here dwell the amygdala, the guardian of fear, passion, and instinct, and the hippocampus, the keeper of a memory. Together, they turn experience into meaning, sensation into feeling. And surrounding all of this, folded like a gray ocean of thought, is the cerebral cortex, the crown of the human brain. It is what allows language, art, imagination, and reason. Every wrinkle on its surface marks space saved by evolution, more room for neurons to connect, more possibility for complexity and consciousness. Within that cortex lie 4 great regions, each with its own quiet domain. The frontal lobes, behind your forehead, plan, decide, and imagine. They are where the idea of you begins, your sense of purpose, personality, and control. The parietal lobes help you navigate space, turning touch into understanding. The temporal lobes, near your ears, handle sound, language, and memory, the music of life. And at the back lies the occipital lobe, the region of vision, turning light into landscape, photons into perception. All these regions communicate constantly, like instruments in an orchestra. No one part acts alone. When you see, memory joins. When you speak, emotion colors your tone. When you decide, The past and future both whisper their counsel. It is in this harmony that the mind emerges, not as a place or a single thing, but as a process, flowing and alive. Even now, as you sit or lie and listen, your brain is changing. Every sound that reaches your ears, every thought you entertain, every faint emotion that rises and fades. Each one leaves a trace. This ability to change, to adapt, to reshape itself through experience is what we call plasticity. For a long time, scientists believed the brain was fixed, that once you reached adulthood, the circuits of thought were carved in stone. But the truth is far more generous. Your brain is never finished. It is sculpted every moment by what you do, what you think, what you love. Each memory, each skill, is written into its structure, not in one place, but across networks that weave together. Practice a piano piece, and the motor cortex refines its timing. Learn a new word, and the temporal lobes stretch their language maps. Remember a face, and the hippocampus strengthens its pathways, anchoring the image deep in memory. When you repeat something often, the connections between neurons grow stronger, like well-trod paths through a forest. When you neglect them, they fade, reclaimed by silence and time. This is how the brain decides what to keep, by listening to what you return to. It is a quiet democracy of attention. What you focus on becomes real, not just in thought, but in flesh. Even injury cannot silence this capacity. When one area of the brain is damaged, nearby regions can take over its tasks. After a stroke, people may relearn to speak or walk. When one sense is lost, others sharpen. The blind person hearing footsteps at astonishing distance. The deaf person reading emotion in movement and light. The brain reassigns, reimagines, refuses to give up. Deep inside, new neurons are even born. In a region called the hippocampus, fresh cells sprout throughout life, a gentle reminder that growth never truly ends. It is a comforting thought, that we are not fixed creatures, but fluid ones, learning, forgetting, relearning, renewing. Every time you choose patience, every time you practice kindness, you are teaching your brain a new language of peace. To understand all this, researchers have learned to listen to the brain in many ways. Some methods are quiet, simply recording its waves. Others are like lanterns, lighting up its hidden landscapes. An EEG, or electroencephalogram, places small sensors on the scalp. It listens to the brain's electrical rhythms, ripples of alpha, beta, theta, and delta waves. Each rhythm has its own tempo, its own role in thought, alertness, and rest. Other tools let us see the brain in motion. An fMRI, or functional magnetic resonance image, detects changes in blood flow, showing which regions awaken when we see, speak, or dream. A PET scan traces the travel of molecules, the silent chemistry of life made visible. And in laboratories around the world, a technique called transcranial magnetic stimulation can nudge brain regions gently, revealing how cause and effect ripple through the network. Every discovery humbles us. Each picture of the living brain reveals how much we still do not know. It is a landscape both mapped and mysterious, a continent of thought we are only beginning to explore. The relationship between brain and behavior is not one of command, but of reflection. Each structure, each signal, mirrors something you do or feel. The amygdala lights up with fear and excitement, a small almond of tissue that decides whether to fight, flee, or simply feel. The hippocampus binds moments into memory, turning experience into story. The prefrontal cortex, poised behind the eyes, weighs options, imagines consequences, restrains impulse. And when chemicals drift out of balance, our emotions too tilt and sway. A little too much dopamine, and thought races into restlessness. Too little serotonin, and color fades from the inner world. Too much cortisol, the hormone of stress, and even simple joys feel distant. The body and brain are not separate actors. They are partners in every mood, every triumph, every despair. Understanding this does not remove mystery, it deepens it. Because even as we trace the flow of electricity and molecules, we cannot yet explain how those signals become experience. How does the firing of neurons create the taste of coffee, the ache of missing someone, the quiet peace of letting go? We can measure activity, but consciousness itself remains elusive, like light that changes when you look at it. Perhaps that is what makes the study of the brain so endlessly human. It is not only the object of our curiosity, it is the source of it. In every thought about the brain is thinking about itself. A circle of awareness, infinite and intimate. And while this circle turns, the brain continues its daily symphony. Governing motion, sensing the world, maintaining the fragile balance of life. Signals travel down the spinal cord to the muscles of the heart, to the lungs, to the eyes that blink without command. Every blink, every heartbeat, every steady breath is a line of code in the program of being alive. Even simple movements reveal astonishing cooperation. To reach for a cup, your visual cortex sees it. The parietal lobe measures distance. The frontal lobe plans the movement. The cerebellum coordinates precision, and sensory feedback corrects the motion mid-air. All of this in less than a second. It feels effortless because your brain has practiced it millions of times. Emotion, too, is cooperation, a conversation between body and thought. Fear tightens the stomach and sharpens the senses. Joy relaxes muscles and brightens vision. Each feeling is a story told both in nerves and hormones, a duet between electricity and chemistry. Sometimes the balance falters. Stress stretches the system, keeping the sympathetic branch of the autonomic network on alert. Muscles tense, sleep shortens, and the brain learns the pattern of worry. But it can also learn calm. Slow breathing, gentle focus, moments of rest. Each one tells the nervous system, it's safe now. Over time, the pathways of peace grow stronger. In this way, self-care is not indulgence. It is neural maintenance. You are tuning the instrument that plays the song of your life. As you rest tonight, the brain continues its tireless work of balance and renewal. The prefrontal cortex dims its chatter. The limbic system releases its grip, and slow waves begin to roll across the cortex like tides. Neurons fire in rhythmic harmony, washing the mind clean of the day's noise. During deep sleep, the brain's cleaning system awakens. The glymphatic flow that clears away waste proteins, making space for tomorrow's thoughts. Dreams begin to stir. Fragments of memory, emotion, and imagination. It is the brain talking to itself, sorting, rehearsing, healing. By morning, it will have rewired tiny connections, strengthened useful patterns, and softened the weight of what no longer matters. All while you simply breathe. Even now, as you listen, that process has already begun. Your heart slows, your breathing evens, and the orchestra within settles into its nocturne. Tomorrow, this same organ will wake to another day of perception and wonder. Ready again to learn, to love, to remember. But for now, you may let it rest. The brain knows what to do. The signals will keep flowing, the cells will keep glowing. The universe within will continue to hum, quietly, beautifully, endlessly. The story of the brain is also the story of development, a lifelong transformation that begins before birth and continues into the quiet years of age. Inside the womb, long before a child ever sees light, tiny clusters of cells begin to specialize. Some become skin, others muscle, and a precious few begin to fold into a tube that will one day become the brain and spinal cord. Electrical activity begins astonishingly early, even before there is thought, before memory, before awareness. It is as though life is already rehearsing for consciousness. After birth, the brain grows at an extraordinary rate. Neurons multiply their connections by the billions, forming new circuits every second. A newborn's mind is a storm of potential, full of energy, but still learning how to organize itself. Every sound, every touch, every gentle voice becomes a piece of that architecture. Experience shapes the brain, carving pathways where before there was only possibility. The first years of life are a symphony of discovery. The senses awaken, sight sharpens, hearing tunes itself, taste and smell become teachers. The baby reaches, imitates, and learns cause and effect. That crying brings comfort. The touch means safety. That a familiar face is love. As development continues, the brain refines itself. Unused connections are trimmed away in a process called pruning, leaving behind the most efficient and meaningful networks. It is the biological version of editing, a masterpiece emerging from excess. The frontal lobes, which govern decision-making and impulse control, mature slowly, not reaching full development until the mid-20s. That is why adolescence feels like standing on the edge of two worlds. The emotions of the limbic system are fully awake, but the calm guidance of the prefrontal cortex is still learning restraint. It is a time of creativity, risk, and raw feeling, a necessary turbulence on the path to maturity. Through adulthood, the brain stabilizes, weaving patterns of memory, skill, and identity. Each new experience adds subtle changes, some fleeting, others permanent. When you fall in love, dopamine and oxytocin strengthen emotional bonds. When you experience loss, cortisol and norepinephrine alter your sleep and focus. The brain does not simply record events. It lives them, reshaping itself around what matters. Even in old age, the brain continues to adapt. Neurons may fire more slowly, but the networks of understanding, the patterns of wisdom, grow deeper. Older adults often use both hemispheres for tasks that once required only one. The brain learns to cooperate with itself in new ways, turning experience into efficiency. Across the lifespan, one principle endures. The brain is the instrument of adaptation. Its purpose is not perfection, but balance. It adjusts to injury, to change, to the simple passage of time. It is both fragile and resilient, a paradox that defines all living systems. And behind its biological story lies another, even older one: evolution. The human brain did not appear fully formed. It is the latest chapter in a long experiment written by life itself. At its base lies the brainstem, ancient and reptilian, responsible for heartbeat, breath, and survival. Wrapped around it is the limbic system, an inheritance from early mammals, the circuitry of emotion, bonding, and care. And layered on top is the neocortex, the vast sheet of folded gray matter that gave rise to language, reason, and imagination. This three-layered design tells the history of our species. The deepest parts keep us alive, the middle makes us feel, and the outer lets us wonder. Evolution never replaced what came before. It built upon it, each new layer communicating with the old. That is why emotion and reason are forever entwined. The ancient brain still whispers beneath our modern thoughts. A flicker of fear, a rush of joy, a heartbeat quickened by love. These are echoes of ancestors long gone, preserved in the circuitry of survival. Even creativity has roots in this layered design. The limbic system provides emotion and motivation, while the cortex shapes them into art, music, and innovation. The spark of inspiration is not one thing, but a conversation between the primitive and the profound. Language, too, emerged from this interplay. In the left hemisphere, regions like Broca's and Wernicke's areas coordinate the sounds and meanings of speech. But emotion gives those words their color. The right hemisphere interprets tone, rhythm, and subtlety. Together, they allow us not just to speak, but to communicate, to share thought and feeling across the impossible gap between minds. Consciousness, perhaps the brain's greatest mystery, arises from these same interactions. No single region is responsible for awareness. It is the combined activity of billions of cells, integrating sensation, memory, and imagination into the seamless experience of being alive. Some scientists compare it to a symphony. No one instrument creates the music, but together, they make something larger than themselves. Others see it as an emergent property, like waves forming on water when countless molecules move in unison. In the end, consciousness may be the universe noticing its own complexity. Still, the brain's most astonishing quality might be its humility, how effortlessly it balances wonder and routine. While you ponder philosophy, it quietly regulates blood pressure. While you feel love or awe, it tracks oxygen, glucose, and temperature. It performs the sacred and the ordinary in the same moment, never resting, never needing applause. Even as we study it, the brain studies us in return. Every insight reshapes how we see ourselves, how we treat the mind in illness, and in health, how we understand that thought and biology are one and the same. Modern neuroscience continues to refine its tools, peering deeper into the living brain than ever before. We can now trace single neurons as they fire, see memories forming, watch decisions unfold in real time. But each discovery only reveals more questions. For every answer, a new mystery flickers at the edge of understanding. A reminder that knowledge, like consciousness, is infinite in both directions. And yet, despite all our instruments and theories, the true wonder of the brain is not found in data, but in the quiet moments of awareness themselves, in a child's curiosity, in the warmth of memory, in the stillness of thought before sleep. Because the brain is not only an organ that knows, it is one that feels knowing. It does not just perceive beauty, it experiences awe. It does not merely register loss, it grieves. It does not simply plan the future. It imagines, dreaming worlds that have never existed before. The same tissue that evolved to help ancient creatures find food and shelter now contemplates the meaning of love, builds telescopes to look at galaxies, and studies itself under a microscope. It is both scientist and subject, observer and observed. Even in silence, the brain is at work, a network of motion beneath stillness. As you listen now, some neurons are processing language, others are interpreting rhythm and tone. A few are mapping the meaning of these words to memories, to thoughts of your own. Without effort, without command, your mind turns sound into understanding. And somewhere, deep within, a few neurons will remember this. They will strengthen their bonds, leaving behind a trace of tonight's reflection. A subtle physical memory of wonder. The brain did not appear from nowhere. It is the result of hundreds of millions of years of slow, persistent refinement. A biological experiment that began long before there were humans, or even mammals, or anything that could be called a thought. If you were to travel backward through time, you would see the mind unravel layer by layer, each older than the one before it. First would go language, then art, then planning and empathy and imagination, until all that remained was instinct. The reflex to flee, to feed, to reproduce. That ancient heartbeat of survival still echoes in you today. At the base of your brain sits the brainstem, a slender stalk of tissue that controls heartbeat, breathing, and sleep. It is the oldest part, shared with reptiles and fish. Wrapped around it is the limbic system, the seat of emotion, memory, and motivation. A gift from our mammalian ancestors, who learned that survival depends not just on strength, but on care, on bonding, on the warmth of another. And resting atop these ancient layers is the neocortex, the newest, largest, and most mysterious of all. Folded into ridges and valleys, it gives rise to everything we call human: language, reason, imagination, and reflection. The neocortex is a thin sheet of gray matter, barely a few millimeters thick, and yet within it lie billions of neurons, each communicating with thousands of others. It is here that the world becomes experience. When light enters your eyes, it ends its journey in the occipital lobes, where patterns of brightness are transformed into vision. When sound reaches your ears, the temporal lobes translate vibration into tone, rhythm, and meaning. When you move, the motor regions of the frontal lobe command your muscles, while the cerebellum refines your balance and timing. But these areas do not work in isolation. They converse constantly, sending information back and forth in a ceaseless loop of prediction and correction. When you reach for a glass, your brain has already simulated the movement before your hand leaves your lap. When you listen to a familiar song, it anticipates the next note, rewarding you with a small surge of pleasure when the prediction is right. The brain is a storyteller, always narrating the world a fraction of a second ahead of reality. In this way, consciousness itself may be a kind of prediction. The brain's best guess at what is happening, moment by moment. Some neuroscientists call this the controlled hallucination theory, that what you perceive is not the world as it is, but the world as your brain expects it to be, constantly revised by new evidence from the senses. You are, in a sense, the narrator and the listener of your own life. This predictive brain is what allows imagination to exist. When you dream, the same circuits that interpret reality are activated. Only now the input comes not from the eyes or ears, but from within. Memories and emotions reassembled into strange and beautiful combinations. In REM sleep, the brain rehearses emotion, blending fear, joy, loss, and longing into stories that have never happened. It is the mind's way of processing what the waking world could not. Even creativity in waking life draws on this same capacity. When an artist paints or a composer invents a melody, or a scientist envisions a new theory, the brain is weaving together fragments of memory and pattern recognition. It is experimenting with what if. And though we often speak of inspiration as if it comes from nowhere, it comes from everywhere. From every experience the brain has ever stored, rearranged into something new. Creativity is not a separate faculty. It is perception turned inward. It is the act of seeing possibilities where none seem to exist. And like every other function of the brain, it can be trained. The more you play, explore, and imagine, the more flexible your neural connections become. The circuits of creativity are not fixed pathways, but gardens that flourish when tended with curiosity. This flexibility, this neuroplasticity, is also what allows the brain to recover from injury, to adapt to new languages, to learn entirely new skills, even late in life. Every time you practice something unfamiliar, your brain strengthens the connections that support it. The act of learning is literally the act of building new architecture inside your skull. And yet, for all its adaptability, the brain is an energy-hungry organ. It makes up only about 2% of your body weight, but it consumes roughly 20% of your energy. Every thought, every flicker of awareness, is powered by the silent burning of glucose and oxygen. When you feel mentally exhausted after long concentration, it is not just metaphor. Your neurons have literally spent their fuel. To manage that cost, the brain is constantly choosing what to pay attention to and what to ignore. Out of the billions of sensory signals entering every second, you consciously perceive only a handful. The rest are filtered, handled automatically by lower regions of the brain. This selectivity is what allows focus, but it also means that much of reality remains unseen, hidden behind the veil of your own attention. Even emotion is part of this economy. Feelings help the brain decide what matters most. Fear draws focus to danger. Joy reinforces safety and connection. Sadness slows the system down, forcing reflection and recalibration. Each emotion has a biological purpose, not to distract, but to inform. Without them, thought would be aimless, and reason would lose its compass. It is sometimes said that the amygdala is the brain's alarm bell. When it senses threat, it triggers a cascade through the hypothalamus and adrenal glands, flooding the body with adrenaline and cortisol. The heart pounds, muscles tighten, breath quickens, preparing for action. Once the danger passes, the parasympathetic system gently lowers the alarm, bringing balance back. This dance between arousal and calm, between tension and release, is one of the oldest rhythms in biology. But emotions are not merely reactions. They are also guides. The prefrontal cortex learns from them, using memory to predict future outcomes. When you choose patience over impulse, you are literally strengthening pathways between these regions, teaching the mind to pause, to consider, to choose wisely. This ability to think about thinking is called metacognition, and it may be the defining feature of human consciousness. It allows you to notice your own mind at work, to reflect on how and why you feel what you feel. It is the moment when awareness looks in the mirror and recognizes itself. Some philosophers have called this the light behind the eyes. Others, the observer. Whatever we name it, it is the quiet witness that watches the flow of thoughts without being swept away. It cannot be measured in a scan or captured in a diagram, and yet it feels more real than anything else. Science approaches this mystery with humility. We can map the patterns of brain activity that accompany awareness, but we cannot yet explain why those patterns are accompanied by experience. The question, why does it feel like something to be alive, remains one of the great frontiers of neuroscience and philosophy alike. Still, each discovery brings us closer. We know that consciousness arises not from a single region, but from integration, the binding together of perception, memory, emotion, and action into a unified whole. Some researchers believe it emerges from synchronized oscillations, as vast networks of neurons fire in harmony. Others think it depends on feedback loops, where the brain's predictions are constantly compared to sensory reality. In both cases, awareness seems to bloom where information meets coherence. Perhaps that is what makes human consciousness unique. Our ability not only to experience the world, but to imagine how it might be different. We can simulate futures, revisit the past, and create meaning in the present. The brain is a storyteller, and consciousness is the story it tells itself. This narrative quality extends even into our dreams. During REM sleep, the prefrontal cortex relaxes, the limbic system becomes active, and memories are woven into strange, emotional narratives. Sometimes dreams are random, the brain's housekeeping at work. Other times, they are symbolic, expressing what cannot be spoken in waking life. In both cases, they are evidence that the mind never stops creating. When you awaken from a dream, you carry a trace of its chemistry, the soft afterglow of an inner journey. Even though the images fade, the emotional imprint remains. Dreams are not meaningless. They are the brain's way of testing its understanding of the world, a rehearsal for living. And perhaps that is the true genius of the human brain, its capacity to create meaning where none is given. From the same matter that forms stars and stones, it builds stories, values, and love. It looks at chaos and invents order. It looks at time and imagines eternity. The future of neuroscience lies in unraveling how such meaning arises from matter, how the dance of electricity and chemistry becomes thought and feeling. Already, new technologies let us see the brain in unprecedented detail. Microscopes that can follow the firing of a single neuron, AI models that map entire connectomes. The vast networks linking every cell to every other. We are beginning to glimpse the full architecture of awareness, the pattern that makes us self. And yet, the more we discover, the more we realize how vast the unknown remains. Perhaps that is fitting. The brain, after all, is not only an object of study, but the very thing doing the studying. It is both the microscope and the mystery. It seeks to know itself, and in doing so, reminds us that knowledge is not a destination, but a living process, a mind reflecting on its own wonder. As science moves forward, our understanding deepens not just technically, but compassionately. We learn that mental illness is not weakness, but imbalance. That healing is not only chemical, but relational. That the mind thrives in connection, just as neurons do. Every discovery about the brain is also a lesson about kindness. For in the end, this organ that drives thought and motion and emotion is not a machine, but a living conversation. Between cells, between people, between the self and the world. It reminds us that intelligence is not isolation, but harmony. And as long as it hums, as long as electricity flickers between its countless cells, you will continue to experience the miracle of awareness, to see, to feel, to learn, and to wonder at the fact that you can wonder at all. The story of the brain, like the story of life, is one of connection. Billions of cells, each with its own pulse and rhythm. come together to form a pattern that can think about itself. And from that pattern emerges everything you have ever known. Every face, every dream, every heartbeat of meaning. It's humbling, isn't it? To realize that all of human history, every poem, every love letter, every act of courage or cruelty, has unfolded inside the delicate folds of this gray matter we all share. Your mind, like every other, is a single thread in a fabric that stretches across generations. Each time you teach or comfort or simply listen, you are passing along the quiet electricity of knowledge. Each time you remember someone, their pattern lives again inside your neurons, a small echo of their existence, glowing in the present. And when you close your eyes, that same living network turns inward, weaving its nightly symphony of restoration and reflection. The brain never truly sleeps. It only shifts its focus from the outer world to the inner one. As the body slows, waves of activity ripple gently across the cortex. Memories are replayed, emotions sorted, tissues repaired. You may not be aware of it, but the mind is quietly tending to itself, trimming away what's no longer needed, strengthening what still matters. This rhythm of activity and rest has guided your brain since long before you were born. Even as an embryo, it pulsed with tiny bursts of energy. Practice runs for a lifetime of thought. And when your final breath one day fades into stillness, the atoms that once formed those thoughts will scatter back into the earth and stars, ready to join another cycle of life. There is a strange comfort in knowing that nothing is ever truly lost. The elements of your brain, carbon, calcium, iron, are older than the planet itself. Forged in ancient stars, they have gathered once more to think, to feel, to remember. And when their work is done, they will return to the cosmos that made them. Perhaps consciousness is the universe remembering itself for a brief while through you. Perhaps the thoughts that flicker behind your eyes are the echoes of something vast, filtered through the fragile machinery of the human mind. Whatever it is beautiful beyond measure, because it means that, for this fleeting moment, the cosmos has found a way to wonder about its own existence. Through your senses, the universe sees itself. Through your voice, it hears itself. Through your curiosity, it learns itself. And so, when you feel small, or tired, or uncertain, remember that the matter inside your skull was once part of stars. You carry the memory of creation in every cell. The same brain that frets over tomorrow is also the one that dreams in color, that remembers laughter, that invents art, that loves without reason. It is both fragile and infinite. Even now, as you listen, it continues to hum softly, balancing chemistry and electricity with perfect precision. Signals flicker through the hippocampus. Oxygen flows through the cortex. Dopamine drifts across synapses in quiet joy. Your brain is alive, not as an idea, but as a constant act of harmony. So let it rest now. You have learned enough for tonight. The science, the poetry, the mystery, they all belong to the same gentle truth, that you are a living constellation, and your thoughts are its stars. There is no need to hold on to anything. The neurons will keep firing, the heart will keep beating, and the universe within you will continue its calm conversation. You are safe inside the rhythm of life, safe in the quiet intelligence of your own being. Let the weight of your body sink a little deeper. Let your breath slow. Let the endless network of your mind fold itself into silence, the way the ocean folds into the night. Soon the boundaries between thought and dream will blur, and you will drift, carried by the same forces that have always carried you. The pulse of the brain, the whisper of the heart, the hum of the universe itself. And somewhere within that stillness, the mind that has spent the day exploring itself will finally rest in the mystery it was built to seek. Good night.